Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you a question. Have you ever felt alone, cut off, or even abandoned, only to wonder, why is this happening to me? What if I told you that this season of isolation is not a punishment, but preparation? God isolates you before blessing you, not to break you, but to build you. Isolation is one of the most misunderstood seasons in life, yet it is one of the most essential for growth and transformation. When God isolates you, it may feel like rejection, abandonment, or punishment, but in reality, it is preparation for something far greater. This is a process that stretches across the stories of the Bible, the lives of great leaders, and even our own experiences. Isolation is where God does His most profound work in us because it is where He has our undivided attention. Think about Joseph. Before he could become a ruler in Egypt and save nations from famine, he was first isolated from his family, sold into slavery, and then thrown into prison. To the outside world, it looked like Joseph was forgotten. But in truth, God was preparing him in ways no one could see. In those lonely places, Joseph learned leadership, humility, and how to rely on God completely. The very isolation that seemed like a setback was actually the training ground for his destiny. God uses isolation to remove distractions. The world we live in is noisy, full of opinions, influences, and activities that can cloud our vision. When we are surrounded by people, we can become overly reliant on their validation, approval, or support. Isolation strips away those external voices, forcing us to turn inward and upward. In the stillness, we begin to hear God's voice more clearly. His whispers of purpose, direction, and correction reach us when the noise of the world is silenced. Without this kind of preparation, we might step into blessings or responsibilities without the wisdom to handle them. Isolation also serves as a time for God to refine our character. It is easy to look polished and put together in public, but who are you when no one is watching? It is in these hidden seasons that God reveals the areas of our lives that need work. Perhaps it's pride that needs humbling, fear that needs confronting, or wounds that need healing. Whatever it may be, isolation allows God to address it. Like a potter shaping clay, He molds and refines us not for where we are now, but for where we are going. The struggles we face in isolation are not designed to break us, but to build us into people capable of carrying the blessings and responsibilities He has in store. Consider the example of Moses. Before leading the Israelites out of Egypt, Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness. It was during this time that God prepared him for leadership. In the quiet of the desert, Moses learned patience, dependence on God, and how to shepherd a flock, skills he would later use to guide an entire nation. Without this period of isolation, Moses might not have been equipped for the monumental task ahead of him. One of the most profound aspects of isolation is how it deepens our relationship with God. When we are alone, we have no one else to turn to. Our dependence on Him becomes absolute. This is not a time of despair, but of discovery, a time when we learn to trust Him fully and lean on His promises. King David, before he was a king, spent years hiding in caves, running from Saul. In that isolation, David wrote some of the most beautiful psalms, expressing his trust in God's deliverance and faithfulness. Isolation becomes a sacred space where we encounter God in ways that are not possible in the busyness of life. It's important to remember that isolation is not a permanent state. It is a season, a part of the journey. And like every season, it has a purpose. In nature, seeds are buried in the ground, hidden from view. In that dark, isolated place, they begin to germinate, grow roots, and prepare to break through the surface. Without that time underground, the seed would never grow into a strong, fruitful plant. In the same way, your season of isolation is not meant to bury you, it is meant to prepare you to blossom. Another reason God isolates us is to protect us. Sometimes the people or environments around us are not conducive to the growth He desires for us. Isolation can be a way of separating us from negative influences, toxic relationships, or even harmful mindsets. It is a time to reset, recalibrate, and refocus. What may feel like rejection is often divine protection. God knows what and who you need in your life to fulfill your purpose, and sometimes He removes what is not aligned with His plans. Finally, isolation is a time for God to reveal vision and purpose. When you are still, He can speak to you about the plans He has for your life. Jesus Himself often withdrew to solitary places to pray and seek clarity from the Father. These moments of isolation were critical to His mission. If the Son of God needed time alone with His Father, how much more do we? So when you find yourself in a season of isolation, do not despise it. Understand that God is at work even when you cannot see it. He is preparing you, refining you, and equipping you for something greater than you can imagine. Trust the process. Trust the timing. Trust Him. The isolation is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of a new chapter, one filled with purpose, strength, and divine blessing. Silence is one of the most profound and powerful tools that God uses to shape, refine, and direct us. When we think of silence, we often associate it with absence, a lack of noise, activity, or even connection. Yet, in God's hands, silence is anything but passive. It is an active, intentional, and strategic process that draws us closer to Him and prepares us for the journey ahead. When God allows seasons of silence in our lives, it is not because He has forgotten us, but because He is preparing us to hear Him more clearly, trust Him more deeply, and move in alignment with His will. In our noisy, fast-paced world, silence can feel uncomfortable, even unnatural. We are used to constant stimulation, phones buzzing, conversations flowing, and media streaming endlessly. This noise often drowns out the most important voice we need to hear, God's. When He brings us into a season of silence, it is an invitation to tune out the distractions of the world and tune into the whisper of His Spirit. Silence is not about emptiness, it is about creating space. Space for God to speak, space for us to reflect, and space for transformation to take place. Throughout Scripture, we see examples of God using silence to accomplish His purposes. One of the most striking moments is the story of Elijah on Mount Horeb. After fleeing for his life and experiencing the chaos of fear and uncertainty, Elijah encountered God in an unexpected way. There was a powerful wind, an earthquake, and a fire. But God was not in any of those dramatic displays. Instead, He came to Elijah in a gentle whisper. It was in the silence that Elijah truly heard and experienced the presence of God. This story reminds us that God often speaks in ways that require us to be still and listen. His voice is not always loud, but it is always clear to those who quiet their hearts and minds to receive it. Silence is strategic because it positions us to hear not just what God is saying, but also what He is revealing about us. In the stillness, we are confronted with our thoughts, fears, and doubts, things that are easy to ignore in the busyness of life. This confrontation is not meant to discourage us, but to refine us. God uses silence as a mirror, reflecting areas of our lives that need healing, growth, or surrender. It is in these moments of introspection that we begin to understand ourselves better and align our hearts with His. Moreover, silence teaches us the value of waiting. In a world that prizes instant results and quick fixes, waiting can feel like a waste of time. But in God's economy, waiting is never wasted. Silence trains us to trust His timing and His process. It teaches us that not every prayer will be answered immediately, and not every promise will be fulfilled overnight. This waiting season is where faith is strengthened, patience is cultivated, and dependence on God is deepened. Silence is not a delay, it is a deliberate act of preparation. In addition to deepening our trust, silence also reveals the power of God's presence. When we strip away the noise, we become more aware of His nearness. Often we associate God's presence with grand moments, miracles, breakthroughs, or emotional experiences, but silence shows us that He is just as present in the quiet. Like a shepherd guiding his sheep, God's presence in silence reassures us, comforts us, and reminds us that we are never alone, even when the world feels still and empty. Silence is also a time for God to refine our vision. In the noise of life, our focus can become scattered and our purpose can become blurred. Silence is a reset button, a chance to recalibrate our hearts and minds toward what truly matters. When God silences the external noise, He often reveals a clearer picture of His plans for us. It is in these quiet moments that dreams are birthed, that direction is clarified, and purpose is affirmed. Just as Jesus often withdrew to solitary places to pray and connect with the Father, we too need those moments of silence to realign ourselves with God's will. Another strategic aspect of silence is that it teaches us to value God's word above all else. When God seems silent, we are drawn back to the Scriptures, seeking His guidance and promises. This hunger for His word deepens our relationship with Him and reminds us that His voice is always available through the pages of the Bible. Silence pushes us to dig deeper into His truths, to meditate on His promises, and to stand firm on His faithfulness. Finally, silence strengthens us for what lies ahead. Often God's silence comes before a significant breakthrough, a major decision, or a new season in life. It is not a time of inaction, but a time of preparation. Like the stillness before a storm or the quiet before a symphony, silence sets the stage for something powerful. God uses these moments to equip us, to fill us with His peace, and to anchor us in His presence so that we are ready for the challenges and blessings to come. Silence, though difficult, is one of the most loving and strategic tools God uses to shape us. It is a sacred pause in the rhythm of life, a time when He draws us closer, speaks to us more deeply, and prepares us for the fullness of His plans. While it may feel uncomfortable or even unsettling, silence is never a sign of God's absence. Instead, it is a profound reminder of His intimate involvement in every detail of our journey. In the silence, He works in ways we cannot see, planting seeds of faith, strength, and purpose that will bear fruit in His perfect timing. Transformation in solitude is one of the most profound and intimate processes God uses to prepare us for His plans. It is in solitude that the deepest work of change, growth, and development takes place. While solitude may feel like isolation or even abandonment, it is actually a sacred space where God focuses His attention on refining and reshaping us. In this place of stillness and separation, He confronts the parts of us that are hidden, strengthens the parts that are weak, and aligns our hearts and minds with His purpose. Solitude becomes the womb in which transformation is birthed, a process necessary for fulfilling our calling. The process of transformation begins with self-discovery, which often only happens in solitude. When we are surrounded by the busyness of life, the expectations of others, or the constant noise of the world, it becomes difficult to truly see ourselves as we are. Solitude strips away these distractions, forcing us to face our own hearts. In this quiet place, God begins to reveal the areas of our lives that need His touch. He brings to the surface insecurities, fears, and flaws that may have been buried under layers of activity and routine. This self-revelation can be uncomfortable, even painful, but it is the first step toward healing and growth. God cannot transform what we are unwilling to confront, and solitude creates the environment for that confrontation. In solitude, God not only reveals who we are, but also begins to reshape us into who we are meant to be. This transformation is rarely instant. It is a gradual, intentional process. Like a potter working with clay, God takes the raw material of our lives and molds it into something beautiful and purposeful. He smooths out the rough edges of our character, strengthens our foundations, and adds the details that reflect His image in us. This process requires patience and surrender. In solitude, we learn to trust God's hand even when we do not fully understand His methods. We begin to see that the isolation is not punishment but preparation, and that the transformation happening in secret is necessary for the fulfillment of our destiny. Solitude also becomes a training ground for resilience. In the quiet, we are left with our thoughts, our doubts, and our faith. Without the distractions of external validation or support, we learn to rely fully on God. This reliance builds spiritual and emotional strength, equipping us to face challenges with greater confidence and peace. When we emerge from solitude, we do so as stronger individuals, prepared to handle the pressures and responsibilities of the next season. This resilience is not something that can be taught in theory. It is forged through the experience of walking through the fire of transformation alone with God. Another key aspect of transformation in solitude is the renewal of our minds. In the busyness of life, our thoughts can become cluttered with negativity, worry, or worldly influences. Solitude provides the opportunity to reset and refocus. In this quiet space, God speaks to our minds, replacing lies with truth and confusion with clarity. He renews our perspective, helping us see ourselves, others, in the world through His eyes. This renewal is not just about thinking positively, it is about aligning our minds with God's Word and His will. As our minds are renewed, our actions and attitudes naturally follow, reflecting the transformation that has taken place within. In solitude, God also ignites our purpose. It is often in these quiet moments that He reveals the next steps of our journey or clarifies the vision He has placed in our hearts. This revelation does not come from striving, but from surrendering. When we stop trying to control the process and simply rest in His presence, we create space for Him to speak. The clarity that comes in solitude becomes the foundation for future decisions, giving us the direction and confidence to move forward in alignment with His plan. Without this time of quiet preparation, we may step into opportunities unprepared or pursue paths that are not in line with God's will. Transformation in solitude is not just about individual growth, it is about becoming a vessel through which God's purposes can flow. When He works on us in private, it is often because He is preparing us to impact others in public. The lessons learned in solitude, patience, humility, trust, and faith become tools we can use to serve and lead others. Our personal transformation becomes a testimony of God's power and a source of encouragement for those around us. Solitude is not just for our benefit, it is for the benefit of the people we are called to influence and serve. Lastly, solitude transforms our relationship with God. In the quiet, we experience His presence in a deeper, more intimate way. We learn to hear His voice, feel His guidance, and trust His heart. This intimacy becomes the foundation for everything else in our lives. The more we know Him, the more we understand ourselves and our purpose. The transformation that happens in solitude is not just about changing what we do, it is about changing who we are in Him. It is about becoming the person He created us to be, fully aligned with His will and fully surrendered to His plans. While the process of transformation in solitude may be challenging, it is also one of the most rewarding and necessary experiences of our journey with God. Testing before trusting is a principle that reflects God's divine wisdom in preparing us for the weight of His blessings and responsibilities. Trust is not something that is granted without merit, it is earned, proven, and reinforced through a process of refinement. When God tests us, it is not to harm or discourage us, but to reveal our hearts, develop our character, and prepare us to handle what He has planned for us. Just as gold is tested in fire to purify it, so are we tested in life's circumstances to refine our faith, strengthen our resolve, and align us with God's purpose. Testing is an essential part of the journey because it exposes what is hidden. In times of ease and comfort, it is easy to appear faithful, patient, or steadfast. However, it is in moments of trial that the true condition of our hearts is revealed. These tests are not for God's benefit, as He already knows us fully, they are for our benefit. Through testing, we see the areas of our lives where we lack faith, where pride may linger, or where fear still holds sway. These revelations, though uncomfortable, are necessary for growth. They allow us to confront our weaknesses and bring them to God for healing and transformation. God's testing often begins in the small things. Before He entrusts us with greater responsibilities or blessings, He tests our faithfulness in what we already have. This principle is echoed in the words of Jesus, "Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much." How we handle the small opportunities, the unseen tasks, or the moments when no one is watching reveals whether we are ready for more. If we are careless, ungrateful, or disobedient in the little things, how can we expect to handle the weight of greater blessings or assignments? God's testing is His way of preparing us step by step for the fullness of His plan. The process of testing is not just about revealing flaws, it is also about building resilience. Life's challenges, though difficult, are opportunities for growth. When we face trials, we are forced to rely on God in ways we might not otherwise. Testing deepens our faith, teaching us to trust God's promises even when circumstances seem contrary. It strengthens our spiritual muscles, building perseverance, patience, and hope. Just as physical exercise requires resistance to build strength, so do spiritual tests build our capacity to handle challenges and blessings alike. Another critical aspect of testing is that it refines our motives. It is possible to do the right thing for the wrong reasons, seeking recognition, validation, or personal gain. Through testing, God purifies our intentions, aligning them with His will. He teaches us to serve with humility, give with generosity, and act with integrity. This refining process ensures that when we receive His blessings, we use them for His glory rather than our own. Without this testing, we might misuse the gifts He gives us or become distracted by selfish ambitions. Testing also teaches obedience. In the Bible, Abraham's willingness to sacrifice Isaac is one of the most profound examples of trust born out of testing. God did not desire the death of Isaac, but wanted to test Abraham's faith and obedience. In that moment, Abraham demonstrated that his trust in God was greater than his attachment to the blessing God had given him. This test revealed the depth of Abraham's faith and set an example of obedience for generations to come. When we are tested, we too are given the opportunity to show our trust in God by choosing His way over our own understanding or desires. Patience is another virtue developed through testing. In a culture that values instant gratification, waiting on God can feel challenging. Yet testing often involves delays, unanswered prayers, or seasons of uncertainty. These moments teach us to wait with faith, knowing that God's timing is perfect. Through the process, we learn that what seems like a delay is often divine preparation. Testing stretches our faith, teaching us to hold on to God's promises even when the fulfillment is not immediately visible. This kind of patience is not passive but active, rooted in trust and expectation that God is at work behind the scenes. Testing also builds humility. It reminds us of our dependence on God and keeps us from becoming prideful or self-reliant. When we face trials, we are often brought to the end of our own strength and abilities, forcing us to lean on God completely. This dependence is not a sign of weakness but of wisdom, recognizing that we cannot fulfill God's purposes in our own power. Through testing, God humbles us, teaching us to seek His guidance, rely on His provision, and give Him the glory in all things. Ultimately, testing is about preparation. God's tests are never random or meaningless. They are intentional and purposeful, designed to equip us for the future. Before David became king, he was tested through years of hardship, from tending sheep in obscurity to facing Goliath to fleeing from Saul. These tests prepared him to lead with wisdom, courage, and reliance on God. Similarly, our tests are preparing us for what lies ahead. They are shaping us into people who can handle the weight of our calling, steward God's blessings faithfully, and reflect His character in all we do. The testing process is not easy, but it is essential. It is through these trials that we are transformed, our faith is fortified, and our trust in God is deepened. While it may be uncomfortable or even painful, testing is a sign of God's love and His commitment to our growth. He tests us not to harm us, but to prepare us, ensuring that we are ready to step into the fullness of His plans and purposes for our lives. Protection in separation is a principle deeply rooted in God's design for His people. At first glance, separation can feel like rejection or punishment, but in reality, it is often a sign of divine care and intentionality. God separates us not to harm us, but to shield us from dangers we may not perceive, to prepare us for a greater purpose, and to ensure that we remain aligned with His will. It is in these seasons of separation that He works behind the scenes, orchestrating events, refining our character, and safeguarding us from harm that could derail His plans for our lives. One of the most profound reasons God separates us is to protect us from influences that may not be immediately visible. In life, we often find ourselves surrounded by people, situations, or environments that seem harmless, even beneficial. However, not every connection or opportunity is aligned with God's purpose for us. Separation allows God to remove us from environments that could compromise our integrity, dilute our faith, or distract us from His calling. This act of divine intervention may feel painful in the moment, especially when it involves distancing ourselves from relationships or opportunities we deeply value. Yet in hindsight, we often see how God's protection was at work, shielding us from unseen dangers or preparing us for something better. Separation also protects us by providing clarity. When we are surrounded by noise, opinions, and competing priorities, it can be challenging to discern God's voice and direction. By pulling us away from the distractions of the world, God creates a space where we can focus on Him and gain a clear understanding of His will. This clarity is not just about hearing His voice, it is also about recognizing who we are in Him. In separation, we learn to find our identity, worth, and purpose in God, rather than in the approval or validation of others. This shift is essential for stepping into the fullness of what He has called us to do. Another way separation acts as protection is by fostering growth in isolation. Growth often requires an environment free from competition, comparison, or external pressures. Just as seeds are planted in the ground, hidden from view, so are we sometimes placed in seasons of solitude where God can nurture and develop us without interference. These hidden seasons are not wasted, they are where the most significant work happens. In solitude, God strengthens our foundations, teaches us valuable lessons, and equips us for the challenges ahead. Without this period of private preparation, we might step into opportunities prematurely, unprepared for the responsibilities they entail. Separation also protects us from the temptation to conform. In a world that constantly pushes us to fit in, God's call often requires us to stand out. This can be difficult when we are surrounded by influences that pressure us to compromise our values or dilute our faith. By separating us, God provides a buffer, giving us the strength and space to remain steadfast in our convictions. This protection is not about isolation for its own sake, but about preserving the uniqueness of our calling and ensuring that we remain true to who He has created us to be. Additionally, separation can serve as a reset. There are times when we become so entangled in the busyness of life or the expectations of others that we lose sight of God's priorities. Separation allows us to step back, evaluate our lives, and realign ourselves with His plans. It is a time of recalibration where God removes the clutter and distractions that may have accumulated over time. In this reset, we find renewed focus, energy, and passion for what truly matters. God's protection in separation is also evident in His timing. There are seasons when we feel ready for more responsibility, more influence, or more opportunities. Yet God may separate us to protect us from stepping into something prematurely. Just as a parent withholds certain privileges from a child until they are ready, God's separation is His way of ensuring that we are fully equipped for the next stage of our journey. This waiting period is not about withholding blessings, but about preparing us to handle them wisely and faithfully when the time comes. Separation also serves as a shield against spiritual attack. When we are on the brink of a breakthrough or a new season, the enemy often seeks to distract, discourage, or derail us. By removing us from situations where we are vulnerable, God provides a layer of protection, allowing us to grow stronger in Him. This divine covering ensures that we are not only shielded from harm, but also empowered to stand firm against opposition when the time comes to step into our purpose. Finally, separation protects us by teaching us dependence on God. When we are removed from familiar environments or supportive relationships, we are forced to rely on Him in new and deeper ways. This dependence strengthens our faith and builds an unshakable trust in His provision and guidance. In these moments, we come to understand that God is not just a distant overseer, but a present help in every aspect of our lives. This revelation transforms how we approach challenges, equipping us with the confidence that no matter where He leads us, His protection and provision will follow. While separation can be a difficult and lonely experience, it is one of the most loving and intentional acts of protection God provides. It is a season of preparation, growth, and refinement designed to shield us from harm and set us apart for His purposes. Though it may not always be easy to understand in the moment, separation is a gift, a reminder that God is deeply invested in our well-being and destiny. As we embrace these seasons, we come to see that His protection is not just about keeping us safe, but about positioning us to thrive in the fullness of His plan. Purpose revealed in the process is a profound principle that highlights the way God works in our lives. Often we yearn for clarity and understanding of our purpose from the very beginning, hoping to see the full picture before taking any steps. Yet God, in His wisdom, rarely reveals everything at once. Instead, He unfolds our purpose progressively, step by step, through the experiences, challenges, and seasons of life. This process is not meant to frustrate us, but to prepare us, refine us, and align us with His perfect plan. It is in the journey itself that purpose is often uncovered, and this revelation comes not through shortcuts, but through faithful persistence in the process. The process begins with small, seemingly insignificant steps. Many people overlook the importance of these early stages, yearning for the grandeur of the end goal. However, it is in these humble beginnings that the foundation is laid. God often starts us in places of obscurity, where our character is shaped and our faith is tested. These initial stages may feel unrelated to the purpose we envision, but they are essential in preparing us for what is to come. Just as a seed must be planted in the soil and undergo a hidden process of growth before it emerges, so must we walk through seasons of quiet development before our purpose becomes evident. In the process, God teaches us to trust Him even when the path seems unclear. It is in moments of uncertainty that we learn to rely on His guidance and provision. This dependence on God is crucial because purpose is not about our plans but His. When we trust Him with the unknown, we position ourselves to receive His direction. The process forces us to surrender control, to release our preconceived notions, and to embrace the journey He has set before us. As we do so, we begin to see glimpses of the purpose He is weaving into our lives, even in the midst of challenges and detours. One of the most beautiful aspects of the process is the way God uses our trials to reveal and refine our purpose. Difficult seasons often feel like setbacks, but they are in fact opportunities for growth and revelation. It is in these moments of struggle that our true character is tested and our faith is strengthened. God uses challenges to strip away distractions, sharpen our focus, and clarify what truly matters. These trials often reveal gifts, strengths, and passions that we may not have recognized in easier times. Through the process of overcoming, we gain a deeper understanding of who we are and what we are called to do. The process also teaches us patience. Purpose is not revealed in haste, it unfolds in God's perfect timing. This waiting period can be one of the most challenging aspects of the journey, as it requires us to trust that God is working even when we cannot see progress. In this waiting, we learn the value of preparation. Just as an artist carefully plans and works on their masterpiece, God meticulously crafts our lives, ensuring that every detail aligns with His purpose. The process of waiting is not wasted time, it is a time of refinement, growth, and alignment with God's will. Another critical aspect of the process is the way it connects us to others. Purpose is rarely fulfilled in isolation. It is often tied to the people we encounter along the way. The relationships, mentors, and even adversaries we meet in the process play a significant role in shaping our journey. God uses these connections to teach us, challenge us, and propel us toward our purpose. Each interaction, whether positive or negative, contributes to the larger picture of what He is doing in our lives. The process reminds us that our purpose is not just about us, it is about the impact we are called to make on others. In the process, we also discover the importance of faithfulness in the small things. Purpose is not just about achieving a grand goal, it is about being faithful in every step along the way. When we commit to doing our best in the tasks and opportunities before us, we position ourselves for greater things. God often uses our diligence and obedience in the small moments to prepare us for larger responsibilities. This faithfulness is a testament to our trust in Him and our willingness to embrace His timing and methods. The process also allows us to see God's hand at work in our lives. As we reflect on the journey, we begin to notice the ways He has guided us, protected us, and provided for us. This awareness deepens our faith and strengthens our relationship with Him. It is through the process that we learn to see His fingerprints on every aspect of our lives, from the smallest details to the most significant milestones. This recognition not only affirms our purpose, but also fills us with gratitude for His faithfulness. Ultimately, the process is about transformation. Purpose is not just about what we do, it is about who we become. Through the process, God molds us into the people He created us to be, shaping our character, refining our gifts, and aligning our hearts with His. This transformation is essential because fulfilling our purpose requires not just the right actions, but the right heart. The process prepares us not just for what we are called to do, but for how we are called to live. Purpose is revealed in the process because it is through the journey that we are prepared, refined, and positioned for what God has in store. While we may not understand every step along the way, we can trust that He is working all things together for our good. The process is not just a means to an end, it is a vital part of the purpose itself, teaching us to trust, grow, and live in alignment with God's plan. Through the process, we come to see that purpose is not something we achieve, but something we live out every day as we walk faithfully with Him.